Alan Ghost Carter had experienced a lot of strange things in his time as a pilot, but being abducted by an advanced alien species in the middle of deep space was a new one, even for him. One moment, he was charting an unregistered sector beyond the Kuiper Belt, scanning for any trace of an anomaly detected by UNSF long-range sensors. The next, his cockpit was bathed in sickly green light, his ship's HUD flickered wildly, and every control on his panel locked up. His pulse quickened. Electromagnetic pulse? No, too precise. Some kind of gravity net? Before he could react, a shadow swallowed his ship whole. His external cameras barely caught a glimpse of the attacker before they, too, shut down. A Xiphos-class stealth cruiser. That meant only one thing. This wasn't a random pirate raid. This was the Galactic Council. Shit, Carter muttered. The ship jolted violently as an invisible force clamped onto it, dragging it into the hangar bay of something far larger than his reconnaissance craft. He reached for the emergency override, but the entire system was fried. Even his sidearm, standard UNSF issue, was ejected from his holster by an unseen force. The cockpit canopy hissed open on its own. He barely had time to draw breath before his vision blurred. A wave of unseen energy surged over his body, a sudden crushing weight. Then darkness. He woke up in chains. The air was sterile, unnaturally crisp, filtered through an alien life support system. Carter's body ached from the forced unconsciousness, his limbs secured in energy restraints attached to the cold, metallic walls of a detention chamber. His pilot suit was gone, replaced with a form-fitting gray jumpsuit. No weapons, no comms, no escape tools. They had been thorough. His gaze swept the room. The architecture was unfamiliar. Not sleek like the synthetic designs of the Valkyrie, nor the brutalist fortifications of the Zrith. Instead, it was purely functional, an amalgamation of different alien technologies, suggesting that this place belonged to the Council itself. Carter exhaled slowly, captured by the most powerful interstellar organization in the galaxy. Not great. Then, the doors slid open without a sound, and they walked in. The Galactic Council. There were 7 of them, each representing one of the most powerful factions in the Council. Carter had seen them in classified UNSF briefings, but never in person. A Zrith enforcer, standing over 8 feet tall, his reptilian body encased in ceremonial black and gold battle armor, claws still stained from whatever last unfortunate thing had crossed him. His yellow eyes narrowed at Carter, sizing him up like a predator deciding whether its prey was worth eating. A Y-Vest strategist, a spindly creature covered in iridescent scales, its multiple compound eyes shifting colors as it analyzed him. The Y-Veth were renowned for their cold, calculating war doctrines, their kind responsible for the most devastating space battles in known history. A Valkyrie emissary, its form shifting like liquid light, a being of pure energy wrapped in a semiphysical shell. The Valkyrie didn't speak with words. Their thoughts resonated in the minds of others. The others were lesser species, mechanical diplomat from the Siren AI Collective, a pale, multi-limbed Serac observer, and an eerily silent member of the Typhon Consortium, its dark robes concealing its features. Carter sighed dramatically. Well, this is an honor. 7 big shots, just for little old me. Hope I didn't ruin anyone's lunch plans. No reaction. The Zrith enforcer stepped forward. His voice was like gravel grinding against steel. You are a representative of Earth. You will answer for your species' reckless expansion. Carter arched an eyebrow. Expansion? Buddy, I was just minding my own business, flying a routine scouting mission. You're the ones who grabbed me. The Y-Vest strategist flicked a clawed finger, and a holographic projection appeared in mid-E. It displayed a map of the Orion Arm, highlighting various regions where human activity had increased over the last 20 years. One particular section was circled in red. Your kind has already violated 3 galactic accords, the Y-Veth hissed. Unauthorized faster-than-light travel beyond your designated sector. Unregulated military outposts outside your system. And worst of all, the projection zoomed in on a sector Carter immediately recognized. A deep space station, UNSF 47 Pioneer, orbiting a distant rogue planet near the galactic border. Your people have trespassed into the sovereign expanse, a territory not meant for human interference. Carter kept his expression neutral, but his mind was racing. They know about Pioneer? Shit, that's classified. The Valkyr emissary's shimmering form pulsed, and a voice resonated inside his skull. Your species is evolving too quickly. You do not understand the forces at play in this galaxy. We have taken you to determine the extent of the threat you represent. Carter smirked. Threat? I think you've got it backward. We're the ones playing catch-up. You guys have had warp drives for, what, 1,000,000 years? We've barely had them for a century. The Zrith enforcer growled. And yet, you continue to advance at an alarming rate. Humans are unpredictable, dangerous. The Yveth diplomat leaned closer. We believe your kind is being guided. Carter frowned. Guided? By who? The vile Quall's form dimmed, as if disturbed by the question. That is what we intend to find out. Carter's gambit. Carter exhaled slowly. This was bad. Really bad. The Council wasn't just worried about human expansion. They suspected something else was behind it. And the worst part? They weren't entirely wrong. Pioneer Station wasn't just a military outpost. It was researching something that shouldn't exist. Something older than any species in the Council. If they found out, if they dug too deep, humanity wouldn't just be on trial. The Council would wipe them out before they ever got the chance to become a real power. He had to play this carefully. Carter leaned back in his restraints, putting on his best cocky grin. So, what now? You gonna poke and prod me? See if I'm hiding some deep dark secret. The Zrith general scowled. You will answer our questions, whether you wish to or not. Carter clicked his tongue. All right. You want the truth. He leaned forward. Callsign ghost. Silence. A ripple of recognition passed through the room. The Zrith enforcer stiffened. The Yveth diplomat's skin darkened in shock. Even the Valkyr dimmed. Carter grinned. Yeah, I thought you'd heard of me. Outside, the ship's alarm suddenly blared to life. Something was coming, and the Council had just made a terrible mistake. Alan Ghost Carter had faced down death more times than he could count, but there was something uniquely unsettling about 7 of the most powerful beings in the galaxy staring at him in absolute silence. He could feel it in the air, tension thick enough to cut with a blade. The moment he'd uttered his call sign, something had shifted. Fear, recognition, uncertainty. They knew who he was. The question was, why? The Zrith enforcer was the first to recover. His mandibles clicked sharply, and he stepped forward, his hulking frame casting a shadow over Carter's seated form. You lie. Carter raised an eyebrow. Do I? The Yveth strategist studied him, its bioluminescent eyes shifting through a cascade of unreadable colors. Callsign ghost. It appears in multiple intercepted transmissions from human military operations. Highly classified. Few details exist. The creature's voice was a smooth, hissing whisper. Yet those who speak it react as if whispering a legend. The Valkyr emissary pulsed dimly, its light warping in unnatural patterns. Its voice resonated inside Carter's mind, like an echo that belonged to no single being. Your name does not belong to the living, and yet you stand before us. Carter's smirk didn't waver, but internally his thoughts were racing. They don't know the full truth, but they know enough to be afraid. Good. He could use that. The first question. The Zrith enforcer's voice boomed. What are you? A loaded question. Carter tilted his head, playing dumb. Pretty sure I'm human, but hey, maybe I missed something in my last physical. The Zritha's yellow eyes burned with anger. Do not mock us, Ghost. You are no ordinary soldier. Carter let the silence stretch. Then he leaned back, exhaling. You guys ever consider that maybe I'm just good at my job? A second of silence. Then the Yveth strategist tapped at a control panel, and a new hologram appeared. Carter tensed. It was surveillance recording from the Battle of Europa, one of the bloodiest encounters between humanity and the rogue machine collective known as the Shroudborn. Carter had fought there. Hell, he had barely survived it. The footage was grainy, taken from an enemy war drone's perspective, but Carter could see himself, dodging impossible barrages, piloting his starfighter with reflexes that shouldn't be humanly possible. His ship taking a direct hit, and yet somehow reappearing seconds later, unscathed. To the Council, it must have looked like magic. Your ship was destroyed in this battle. The Wyvether's voice was almost accusatory. But you did not die, and this is not the first time. The hologram shifted, new footage, the Rayloth ambush, the Draconis breakout, the Sargasso Rift incident. Each one showed the same impossible truth. Carter surviving, escaping, returning, when he should have been dead. Carter exhaled through his nose. This was bad. They weren't just interrogating him. They were trying to solve the myth surrounding his name. He had two options: lie and hope they didn't call his bluff, or give them a half-truth and play into their fear. He chose the latter, the answer that changed everything. Carter leaned forward, his restraints humming as they adjusted to the shift in his posture. His tone lowered, all humor evaporating. "You want the truth," he said, voice measured. The council watched him closely. "I don't die." Silence. Then the Zrith enforcer clenched his claws. "Impossible." Carter tilted his head. "Is it? Look at your own damn footage. I've been declared dead 5 separate times. And yet, here I am." The Valkyr emissary flickered violently, as if something about his words sent a ripple through its very existence. "You are Revenant." Carter's stomach dropped. That word, Revenant, wasn't something the council should have known. Not yet. His face didn't betray the sudden alarm ringing through his brain, but inside, his mind was racing. How the hell do they know about that? The Wyveth tapped his control panel again, and suddenly, the hologram shifted to classified UNSF data. Carter's blood ran cold. They had files on Project Revenant. A dangerous revelation. "We intercepted these records from a compromised human outpost," the Wyveth hissed. "Project Revenant. Experimental bioware augmentation. Memory reconstruction. Quantum state manipulation. Your kind is playing with forces you do not comprehend." Carter forced his face into carefully controlled neutrality. "Your kind does not fear death." The vile core's presence pulsed unnaturally. "Because you do not die." Carter had to be careful now. They weren't just suspecting something. They had evidence. And the worst part? The truth was even worse than what they suspected. So, he did what he did best. He weaponized the truth. Carter exhaled, leaning forward slightly. "You think humanity's playing with things we don't understand? Maybe. Or maybe we understand a whole lot more than you think." He let the words sit. The Zrither's claws twitched. The Wyvether's colors flickered rapidly. The Valkyr dimmed, pulsed, then dimmed again. They were uncertain. That was all Carter needed. He smirked. "But if I were you, I'd be asking the bigger question." The Zrith enforcer narrowed his glowing eyes. "And what is that?" Carter's smirk widened. "If you think humans can't die, then ask yourself this: what exactly do you think we're preparing for?" Silence. But in that silence, he saw it. Doubt. Fear. Not of him. Not of humanity. But of what might be coming. A distant alarm suddenly blared through the station. The council members tensed. Carter chuckled, stretching as far as his restraints would allow. "Hey, right on schedule." The Wyveth turned sharply to the security monitors. "Impossible." No ships were detected. A new voice cut through the comms. Deep, authoritative, and unmistakably human. "This is UNSF Dreadnought Retribution. You have something of ours. Return Commander Carter. Now." Carter watched as his Zrither's mandibles twitched in frustration, the Wyvether's colors shifting into defensive hues, and the Valkyr pulsing erratically. They weren't afraid of his people finding them. They were afraid of what humanity would do if they didn't let him go. Carter grinned. "Guess you've got a decision to make." Outside, human warships appeared from the void, completely undetected until now. And for the first time, the Council realized they had underestimated humanity. Badly. The air inside the Galactic Council chamber felt different now. The once smug representatives, aliens who commanded entire civilizations, sat frozen, their expressions unreadable but their silence deafening. Because outside their station, humanity had just called their bluff. Carter could still hear the transmission playing over the comms, its tone cold and surgical. "This is UNSF Dreadnought Retribution. You have something of ours. Return Commander Carter. Now." His grin didn't waver. "See, here's the thing. You lot think humans are reckless, impulsive, Primitive. But let me tell you something you should have already figured out. We don't leave our own behind. The Zrith enforcer's claws twitched. He turned sharply to the YVS strategist, exchanging a look that Carter didn't miss. They were weighing their options, calculating the cost of escalation. And they weren't liking the numbers. The weapons are already hot. The holographic display flickered, now showing the fleet that had just arrived in Council space. The Retribution was at the front, a Titan-class dreadnought, bristling with disruptor cannons, kinetic railguns, and a weapon signature that didn't match anything known to the Council. More human ships flickered into existence behind it. Frigates, destroyers, and 3 other capital ships, their engines humming with a frequency that shouldn't have been possible. The YVS strategist hissed. Your fleet should not have been able to bypass our border defenses. Carter smirked. You're gonna have to update your playbook. Buddy, we figured some things out since the last time you scanned us. The Viocua emissary pulsed erratically, its form shifting in waves of unreadable energy. Your people wield power beyond your time. You should not have this technology. Carter shrugged. And yet, here we are. Silence. Then, the Zrith enforcer slammed his clawed fist into the control panel, cutting the external transmission. We do not negotiate with threats. Carter chuckled, shaking his head. Buddy, that's cute. Real cute. But let me spell it out for you. This is not a negotiation. He leaned forward in his restraints, lowering his voice. You either let me walk out of here, or humanity proves a very simple point. We are not prey. The Yvetha's bioluminescent skin darkened, a gesture Carter had come to recognize as barely concealed anger. You risk war. Carter smiled. I don't think so, because I think you're finally starting to realize something. He let the words hang. You should be afraid of us. The real threat. The Viocua emissary shimmered again, its form dimming unnaturally. For the first time, its telepathic voice had a hint of something different. Not fear. Dread. You are not the first species to rise too quickly. The statement was met with a ripple of silence across the chamber. The Serac observer shifted uneasily, its long, pale limbs twitching. Viocua, be silent. But Carter had caught the slip. He zeroed in like a predator. Not the first. He feigned curiosity, but inside, his pulse spiked. That's funny. You talk like there was someone before us. More silence. Then, the Zrith enforcer exhaled sharply. Enough of this. The Council will not be intimidated. He turned toward the control panel, ready to send a command, possibly to execute Carter, possibly to activate defenses. Either way, Carter saw the shift in momentum. So, he played his final card. He laughed. A genuine, full-chested laugh that echoed through the chamber. The YVS stiffened. The Vioqua's pulsing form faltered. The Serac observer leaned back in discomfort. They didn't understand. God, Carter said, shaking his head. You guys don't even get it, do you? The Zrith enforcer's claws flexed. Explain yourself. Carter's eyes gleamed. You think we're a threat. He exhaled sharply, tilting his head. But I think I just figured it out. The real reason you're also scared. He let his smirk fade. You weren't worried about us expanding. You weren't even worried about us advancing too fast. He narrowed his gaze. You were worried we'd find something. The room froze. He could see it, the unspoken truth behind their carefully guarded expressions. They had been keeping a secret. A big one. Carter exhaled. So tell me, what the hell is out there? A name that shouldn't exist. The Viocua emissary pulsed violently, its energy field shaking. Then, against the protest of the others, it spoke. We call them the Hollow. Carter's veins turned to ice. Because that name, that should not exist. Not in any alien database. Not in any council record. That was a human designation. A classified one. The Zrith enforcer turned sharply to the Viocua, rage flickering across his monstrous face. You have said too much. But Carter wasn't even listening anymore. He was staring at the holographic display, his breath slowing, because the map had changed. A new anomaly had appeared, right on the border of the Sovereign Expanse, the place where Pioneer Station had gone dark 6 months ago. It was moving, and it was coming straight for them. The council members were arguing now, voices rising. But Carter just sat there, staring at the swirling mass on the hologram, because he knew, deep in his bones, what that was. Not a fleet, not an army. Something worse. Something old. And for the first time since his capture, he felt a genuine chill run down his spine. Because if the Holo were real, if they had found their way back, then humanity and the Council had bigger problems. Much, much bigger problems. A new alarm blared through the station, one different from previous ones. Not a warning, a distress signal. Because whatever was out there, it had just arrived. And it wasn't human. The alarm blared, and the holographic display flickered violently as an unknown mass appeared at the edge of Council space. It was enormous, an impossible shape shifting through incomprehensible geometries, a presence that defied physics. The Holo had arrived. The end of silence. Carter watched as the Council chamber descended into chaos. The YVS strategist barked frantic orders in its native tongue, its colors flashing in terrified patterns. The Zrith enforcer slammed his fist on the control panel, activating planetary defenses that Carter could already tell wouldn't make a difference. Because they were too late, the Violcua emissary trembled, its light pulsing erratically like a failing star. Its voice pierced into Carter's mind. They should not be here. The locks should have held. Carter's breath came slow and steady, his military instinct suppressing panic. What locks? No one answered. Because at that moment, the stars outside began to flicker out. First contact. Or was it? The Council chamber plunged into emergency lighting as an unnatural hum resonated through the station. Not a signal. Not a weapon. Something worse. Carter felt it before he understood it. Something was inside his mind. No, not inside. Reaching. Reading. 1,000 fragmented voices whispered in overlapping waves, their meanings just out of reach. Then, one voice broke through. Not alien, not unfamiliar. It was his own. Hello, Ghost. Carter froze. No one else reacted. They hadn't heard it. This was meant for him. It took you long enough to find us. Carter's pulse spiked. He forced his expression to remain unreadable, even as his mind screamed with questions. But one thought rose above the rest. This isn't first contact. Somewhere deep in his subconscious, something clicked. The Holo weren't unknown. They were forgotten. The truth humanity erased. The holograms around the room flickered, and suddenly Carter saw something new. Not Council records. Not classified UNSF reports. Memories. His memories. He saw himself on a dead world, wearing armor that didn't exist anymore, standing before an entity that shouldn't have been real. A voice. A deal. A choice. Then, erasure. Carter inhaled sharply, the shock hitting like a railgun round. This isn't my first time seeing them. They weren't humanity's enemy. They weren't an invader at all. They were the aftermath of something Carter himself had done. The Revenant's bargain. The Holo's presence swelled, filling every corner of his mind. It knew he remembered now. You died, Alan Carter. Again and again. But that was never the problem. Carter's vision blurred. He felt fragments of lost memories slotting into place. He had been part of something. Something called Project Revenant. Something that had never been about saving soldiers. The resurrection protocols. The memory resets. The impossible survival rates. It wasn't just a war experiment. They had used him as a key to something bigger. You were the first to touch the void. The first to leave something behind. Carter exhaled sharply. No. But the Holo didn't lie. He had been here before, and he had left a piece of himself behind. That was why they called him Ghost, because he had never fully returned. The Council's betrayal. The YVS strategist turned sharply toward Carter, its colors shifting to accusation. You knew. Carter snapped back to reality. His restraints released automatically, as if whatever security system had been holding him realized. It didn't matter anymore. The Zrith enforcer's claws flexed. You brought them here. Carter's rage ignited. No. He shook his head, stepping forward. You knew about them. You knew what they were, and you never told humanity. The Violcua flickered erratically. We sealed the past. It was for the greater balance. Carter laughed bitterly. Yeah? How's that working out for you? Because outside, the void pulsed, not with hostility, but with expectation. The Hollow weren't here to fight. They were here to collect. The final choice. The Hollow's voice filled Carter's mind once more. You belong with us. He felt it, a pull at the edges of his being. Some part of him had never left. Some part of him was already hollow. He clenched his fists. And if I say no? The Hollow didn't answer, because it already knew his choice. He always came back. But this time, something was different. Because now, Carter wasn't alone. The hologram shifted one last time, revealing something the Council had never seen before. Humanity's real secret. A second fleet, not in physical space, not using ships, but inside the void itself. Revenants. Others like Carter, those who had died too many times. Those who had touched the Hollow and come back changed. This was never a war. This was a homecoming. And Carter was the first to step forward. He turned to the Council, his voice calm. You thought humanity was a problem. He smiled, stepping toward the edge of the chamber, toward the swirling abyss that called his name. But we were just the beginning. The Hollow swallowed him whole, and the stars went dark. Epilogue. No one knew what happened next. The Hollow did not attack. The human fleet did not fire. Instead, something changed in the fabric of space itself. A new corridor, a passage through the void, opened for the first time in recorded history, and humanity walked through it. The Council never spoke of Carter again, because from that moment forward, he was no longer human. He was the first Hollow King, and the universe would never be the same.